Yo, what is up guys, it's Pedro here, and in today's video I will be reacting to the report from Ben Static saying that the Washington Commanders are expected to franchise tag defensive tackle Daron Payne. I'll talk about if that potentially could lead to a trade. So if you guys are new, make sure to subscribe for Washington and NFL content. It takes 1 second, you will not regret it. Also hit that like button and that notification bell as well. So yesterday the window opened for franchise tags to be placed on players, and I'll just read this from Ben Static, The Athletic, but this is a report from Ben Static. Says the Commanders are expected to use the franchise tag on free agent defensive tackle Daron Payne. Two people with direct knowledge of the situation told Ben Static. Payne was named to the Pro Bowl after a career best 11.5 sacks and 64 combined tackles last season. So not any breaking news, nothing too unexpected, but still early in my opinion to say that they're definitely franchise tagging him, because they still got I believe it's, I don't know the exact date, but it's around a couple weeks until they have to officially place it on him or he becomes a free agent. I think it's early March, so yeah, I guess a little under 2 weeks probably, but that's just something that has always been more likely than not going to happen, because if they franchise tag him, they can still try to, come to a long-term deal. And right now, with Dan Snyder being the owner and likely being on the way out, I'm hoping, hopefully it happens. And if that happens, then a new owner would potentially be more likely to pay, a big contract to a player. Right now, Dan Snyder, it's not a ton of money, because he will be, he is a billionaire and he's going to get $6+ billion, from this sale. But still, why pay, Daron Payne $20 million a year over 5 years, close to $100 million, when you can just wait a little bit and let the next owner do that? So that's just something, and I know not all of it would be paid right now, but that's just something to consider right there. I think the ownership situation could have an effect on this situation, and the franchise tag, I believe it's at $19-ish million a year. So that's, if you want to get him on a long-term deal, you're gonna have to pay him more than that per year. And all along, ever since he started playing really well during the middle of the season, I said it was gonna cost $20+ million a year. So if you franchise tag him, hey, that's great, but you either have him for 1 year. There's 3 scenarios if you're franchise tag him. You have him for 1 year, he plays for you, you're in the same situation next year where you either franchise tag him, let him go, or try to, come to terms on a long-term deal. So that's situation 1. Situation 2, you franchise tag him, and I guess there's four scenarios. Scenario 2, you franchise tag him, and you agree to a long-term deal sometime later, maybe 2 weeks later, maybe 2 months later, maybe 4 months later. Situation 3, franchise tag him, then trade him. And scenario 4 is you don't even franchise tag him and you come to a long-term deal. I think number 4 is the least likely, just because of the ownership situation. I don't know. My preferred scenario would be just number 4, would just be getting a long-term deal done with him right now, but that doesn't seem super likely. That does not seem super likely with the ownership situation, and I don't know. It's just he knows that if he goes to a franchise tag, he can get $19 guaranteed, over $19 million, guaranteed this year. So why is he going to pass that up when, if he has another good year, he's going to get paid another $20 million the next year? So if I'm the Commanders, I do one of 2 things. I try to come to terms on a long-term deal, and if you can't, franchise tag him and still try to do a deal during the offseason. That's number 1. Number 2, you franchise tag him and trade him, because I don't want to lose him for anything. So definitely don't just let him go into free agency this year. I don't think that's really a scenario at all. But also don't have him on the franchise tag him and play him this whole next season, 2023, and then don't pay him in the offseason and you lose him for a 3rd-round comp pick, because I think you could get a 2nd and a 3rd right now for Daron Payne. I really do think so. You just have to trade him to the right team that has draft capital, but also is willing to pay him big money, and you have to have the deal set in place before. That is something to consider, and I wouldn't mind that, because yes, Daron Payne's an amazing player. He is an amazing player. But you have Jonathan Allen there, who was also an amazing player, and you invested a second-round pick in Phidarian Mathis, who, didn't play much. He got injured in the first quarter, I believe, of the first game of the season. With the meniscus tear, but he still has some potential and can probably at the very least will be an okay player. I don't think he'll ever be an elite player, but he can probably be a very solid player for a long time, like a 3 to 7 sack guy, and probably the same level as a run stuffer as Daron Payne was, especially his first few years. That's one scenario, and you get a second and third round pick guaranteed versus, okay, you franchise tag him, you try to come to terms on a long-term deal, but you don't know if he's going to accept it. And if he doesn't going into the season, then you're risking losing him for nothing the next year. So that's just another thing to think about. For me, what I would do, and we can look at some of Daron Payne's stats right here, I would, priority number one, try to get a long-term deal done with him. If you can't do that, franchise tag him. And then leading up to the draft, so you franchise tag him, let's say that's March 7th. You have a month and a half, a little less than a month and a half. You're going to have 5-6 weeks. Try to get a long-term deal done there. If you can't, I would strongly consider trading him, because that's when his trade value is going to be the highest, is right up in the draft. And, I mean, his trade value isn't going to be super high right after the draft because teams are already filling up their needs, unless, I guess, a team isn't able to fill their needs. But I think that if you're going to trade him, try to trade him right before the draft. But if I was in charge of the Commanders, I would, my number one priority would be getting him signed to a long-term extension. I would not have any problem with paying him. First offer I would go is, let's say $17.5 million, 18 million. That might be a little bit of a low ball. And if he doesn't agree to that, and he's like, well, I'm getting 19 on the franchise tag if you guys franchise tag me, that's where it starts. So you say, okay, we'll go 19 million. He's like, nah, we'll go 24. And then you kind of go from there with the negotiation, and maybe at the end you get to 20.5, 21 million a year. And for me, yeah, that seems like a lot, but the cap is going up every year. And if you can get guaranteed good production from a guy, I'm fine paying that. And, maybe we won't get 11.5 sacks a year, but even in 2021, when he had 5 sacks, 4.5 sacks, he was still a good player. He wasn't great like he was in 2022, but he was a good player. And, if he's in between 2021 and 2022, I'm fine paying that much per year because, there's a lot worse things you can do, and guaranteeing having a good player on your, roster for a few years is good. And again, every year the cap's going up, so if you sign him now, it's not going to look too bad in a few years, even if he's just good. And I think he will be great. He's 25 years old. Like, he's still getting better, and I think he's really finding his stride, and I don't think he'll, just be satisfied after he gets a contract. I think he'll try to strive for more, hopefully, like Jonathan Allen did. So that's kind of my take on the Daron Payne situation. Try to pay him. If you can't, come to terms on a deal, then maybe that's when you go towards the trade. So tomorrow we'll definitely have a reaction to the Eric Bieniemy press conference, and if anyone gets hired as a coach, I'll talk about that too. I know there's some guys that are interested, might make a video about that later today. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace.